Welcome to another quiet journey through time. As you settle in, perhaps wrapped in soft blankets or slowly drifting towards sleep, imagine a world far removed from the comforts of today. A world where the clash of swords echoed beneath marble arches and dusty arenas overflowed with cheers, coin, and cruelty. Tonight, we step into the sand-strewn world of ancient Roman gladiators, where strength was survival and applause often meant death. But this will not be a tale of battle cries or flying blades. No, instead, we'll move slowly, through the early morning routines, the heavy meals, the long hours of waiting, and the curious rhythms of a gladiator's life. Then from there, we'll drift through the winding stories of men and women who fought, ruled, and watched within this strange and brutal performance. 7 stories, all tethered to the arena, told not with excitement, but with steady care. We'll descend into the hidden tunnels beneath the Colosseum, glimpse the ambitions of emperors and rebels alike, and finally recline beside imperial banquets where luxury and violence shared a table. Let the weight of the day ease from your shoulders now, and with every breath, we'll step deeper into the worn leather sandals of history. Picture yourself waking to the grey light of dawn, not in a villa or apartment, but in the long communal barracks of a ludus, a Roman gladiator school. The air is thick with the scent of damp straw and the metallic tang of rusted armor left too long unwiped. Dust floats lazily in the shafts of light, pushing through narrow, barred windows. There are no soft beds here. Just rough sleeping mats arranged in rows, some with personal tokens tucked beneath them. Small wooden carvings, bits of cloth, or a smooth stone carried from far-off lands. Around you, other men stir. Some stretch slowly, rubbing at sore limbs. Others move without hurry, conditioned by the routine of hard living. You dress quietly, pulling on coarse wool, lacing leather sandals and checking over your gear. Armor, when worn, is heavy, shoulders aching beneath layers of metal. But for now, it waits in racks, polished to dullness, practical and worn. Breakfast is simple. A bowl of barley porridge, bland and thick. It sticks to your teeth and settles heavy in your gut. Meat is rare, and wine, when given, is watered down. The diet is meant to bulk the body, dense and slow-burning fuel for the day's trials. Outside, in the training yard, the earth is hard-packed from countless footfalls. Wooden weapons are lined up, practice versions of the gladius, the curved seeker, the long hasta spear. The clang of wood against wood begins early and carries on for hours. Instructors, often former gladiators themselves, bark commands in clipped Latin. Their voices are steady, not cruel, but never soft. Each movement is watched. Form is everything. Efficiency, repetition, discipline. You're taught to survive, not to win. Victory is irrelevant if it costs your life. As the sun climbs, so does the heat. Metal helmets grow hotter to the touch, leather grips slick with sweat, and still the drills go on. Parry, strike, retreat, again and again. Around the yard, men fight with silent determination. The older ones wear old scars like medals, raised welts, missing fingers, bent noses. Some wear tokens of past victories, armbands of bronze or bone, rings traded for good luck. But beyond the bruises and the blisters is a strange kind of order, a rhythm, training, eating, mending gear, waiting, because so much of the gladiator's life is waiting, waiting to be called, waiting to fight, waiting for your name to be etched into the lineup for a spectacle you may not return from. And in that waiting, friendships sometimes form. Silent nods, shared meals, quiet understanding, yet trust remains cautious because tomorrow the man you eat beside may be the man you're ordered to face. Evenings are quieter, wounds are tended, bandages soaked in vinegar and herbs, muscles rubbed with oil. Sometimes, if the gods are kind, you're allowed a brief visit from a family member. Or perhaps a scribe brings a message. Few can read it, but it's a reminder that somewhere beyond the arena, life moves on. The night is still. You lie on your back, the ceiling above you low and cracked. Outside, the city of Rome murmurs, vendors calling, animals braying, the distant song of a lute drifting from a tavern window. And in that stillness you listen to the soft breathing of the men beside you, to the ache of your body, to the silence before another day begins. This was life for the average Roman gladiator, not a life of constant violence, but of training, endurance and anticipation, a life heavy with repetition, a life shaped by survival. And now let us gently move forward, from the routine of the everyman to one who dared to change it all, a name that echoes louder than most, Spartacus. Now imagine the same training yard, the same sweat-soaked drills, the same dull porridge and bruised limbs, but within it a man stands slightly apart, not because he is stronger, though he is, not because he speaks louder, he rarely does, but because within him burns a quiet refusal. His name is Spartacus, a Thracian by birth. Hailing from the mountainous lands north of Greece, Spartacus may once have been a soldier. Some say he served with the Roman auxiliaries before falling into captivity. Others suggest he was taken in battle, sold as a slave, and passed through many hands before arriving in Capua at the gladiator school of Lentulus Batiatus. Capua, warmer and more humid than Rome, was home to one of the empire's most renowned ludi. Its walls were high, its guards strict, and its reputation lethal. Gladiators here were trained not just for survival, but for spectacle, for performance. Spartacus trained alongside others, Gauls, Numidians, Greeks. Some quiet, some cruel, some already broken. They were kept in line through punishment and promise, beatings for defiance, the hope of freedom for obedience. But freedom came rarely. And so, in the shadows of the barracks, a whisper began to grow. A plan, a revolt. It began, as such things often do, with a stolen kitchen knife. Then more. They raided the armory, overwhelmed the guards, and spilled out of Capua like water from a cracked jug, impossible to stop once it had begun to flow. 70 men at first, maybe 80, armed with kitchen tools and training swords. But they moved quickly, smartly, and with a kind of hunger the Romans hadn't expected. Spartacus was not the only leader. 2 others stood with him, Crixus and Oenomaus, each commanding respect among their own people. Together, they guided the group southward, avoiding open battle, striking at supply routes, freeing slaves wherever they went. And the freed began to follow. What began as a trickle swelled into a current. Hundreds, then thousands. By the height of the uprising, some claim 70,000 men, women, and children were moving as a single body, fugitive and defiant, a society in flight. But Spartacus never called himself a king. He issued no proclamations. He led not from a throne, but from within the ranks, fighting, planning, always adapting. He forged weapons from iron taken in raids. He negotiated with merchants and even pirates. He tried, more than once, to lead his people out of Italy altogether. But Rome would not allow it. The Senate, humiliated by early defeats, sent general after general to stop them. And still, Spartacus fought on, eluding traps, reversing expectations, refusing to be cornered. It lasted 2 years. 2 years of movement, skirmish, survival, of hope kindled and hope crushed, of growing numbers and dwindling supplies. Eventually Rome sent Crassus, a man of great wealth, ambition, and cruelty. Crassus brought discipline to the Roman legions, harsh discipline. He revived the ancient punishment of decimation, killing 1 in every 10 men who showed cowardice, to drive fear into his own soldiers before facing Spartacus. The final battle came in the south, near the river Silarus. Spartacus, knowing escape was impossible, chose to stand and fight. The accounts are scattered and contradictory, but what seems clear is that Spartacus died in the thick of battle, surrounded by Roman soldiers, refusing to retreat. His body was never found. In the aftermath, Crassus ordered the roads lined with crucified rebels, 6,000 crosses from Capua to Rome. A chilling reminder of what rebellion cost in the Roman world. But Spartacus's name lived on, whispered among slaves, remembered by historians, reimagined by poets and playwrights centuries later. He remains not a legend of conquest, but of resistance. A man who turned a sword meant for show into a symbol of defiance. And as the dust settled on that chapter, another figure prepared to step into the arena, though not from the barracks nor the ranks of the enslaved, but from the marble halls of power itself. Let us now turn to an emperor who fancied himself more gladiator than ruler, a man named Commodus. Now let your mind drift once more, away from the dusty roads of rebellion and into the shimmering heart of imperial Rome. Imagine yourself walking the polished corridors of the Palatine Hill. Marble underfoot, sunlight pouring through vast colonnades, statues watching from alcoves with blank eternal eyes. Here the air is scented with oils and incense, far removed from the arena's sweat and iron. And yet, one man blurred the line between these worlds. Commodus, the son of Marcus Aurelius, born into royalty, destined for greatness. But his greatness, as Rome would come to know, took on a peculiar shape. He was born in the year 161 CE, raised in luxury, and tutored in the finest arts of philosophy and governance. His father, Marcus Aurelius, was a stoic emperor, disciplined, intellectual, often melancholic. He kept journals that would later be called meditations, a quiet testament to duty, reflection, and the burdens of power. But Commodus was different. Where his father sought peace, Commodus sought applause. Where his father governed with restraint, Commodus governed by spectacle. From an early age, he showed fascination with physicality, his own strength, his appearance, the admiration of crowds. And nothing stirred that admiration more than the gladiators' arena. At first it began as play, practice bouts in private, appearances in choreographed displays. But as the years passed, and as Marcus Aurelius died, leaving Commodus the throne at just 19, his fascination deepened into obsession. He styled himself not as emperor alone, but as a warrior emperor, a gladiator god, and so, dressed in armor of gold, sometimes bearing the likeness of Hercules, Commodus entered the arena, not once, not twice, but hundreds of times, always victorious. Of course, his opponents, often injured, elderly, or weakened beforehand, sometimes animals, bound or wounded, so they posed no threat, other times straw dummies dressed like foes of Rome, and yet the crowds cheered, because they had to. Applause was not optional when the emperor performed. On some days, he charged a fee for every Roman in attendance, effectively making the entire city pay to watch him pretend to risk his life. He kept a personal score of victories, 735 by his own count, and he demanded to be called not just Caesar or Augustus, but the Roman Hercules, the conqueror of 1,000 foes, and even the savior of the world. He renamed months after himself. He had statues recast in his likeness. He rewrote rituals to elevate his own glory. But beneath the gleam of spectacle, Rome trembled. The Senate feared him. His advisors whispered behind closed doors. Assassination plots multiplied. Commodus grew more paranoid, more cruel, more distant from the responsibilities of rule. Eventually, the curtain had to fall. In 192 CE, a conspiracy took shape. It involved his mistress, a chamberlain, and a wrestler, each playing their part in silence. One night, in the warmth of his private chambers, Commodus was poisoned. When that failed to kill him, he was strangled by his own fitness trainer, Narcissus. Thus ended the reign of the Emperor Gladiator. Rome erased his memory. His statues were torn down. His name scratched from records and monuments, but his story remained, not as a symbol of strength, but of spectacle turned to madness. A warning, perhaps, that even emperors can become prisoners of their own performance. And as the echoes of his vanity fade, we shift now to a day of celebration. A day when Rome unveiled its grandest arena. Let us gently open the gates to the Colosseum's first games. Let your mind drift to the year 80 CE. Rome is at the height of its power. Its borders stretch from the misty highlands of Britannia to the sands of the Sahara, from the banks of the Rhine to the eastern cities of Asia Minor. Within the city itself, marble glistens under the sun, aqueducts hum with flowing water, and every street carries the scent of roasted grain, wine, sweat, and empire. But on this particular morning, the city holds its breath. The streets are busier than usual, filled with families in their best tunics, merchants shouting above the din, children weaving through crowds. Banners ripple from rooftops, musicians tune their lyres. Soldiers in gleaming helmets line the walkways in crisp formation. For today, the Colosseum opens its gates. Its real name is the Flavian Amphitheater, built by Emperor Vespasian and completed by his son, Titus. It stands as a symbol of Rome's might, of architectural mastery, and of the emperor's promise to give back to the people. A gift made of stone and spectacle. It took nearly a decade to build. Thousands of laborers, engineers, and artisans carved the stone, laid the arches, assembled the retractable awnings known as the velarium, and created seating that could hold 50,000 people, perhaps more. The Colosseum dwarfed any structure of its kind, with entrances numbered and tiered according to class. Senators and nobles sat closest to the action. Slaves and the poor climbed to the upper tiers. As dawn gives way to mid-morning, the gates swing open. The crowd pours in, a low hum of anticipation building like thunder far off. You can almost hear it. The shuffle of sandals against stone, the creak of wooden seats, the distant clatter of armor as gladiators prepare below. The opening festival lasts 100 days, 100 days of games, battles, performances, and pageantry. The inaugural program includes everything: animal hunts, naval reenactments, theatrical executions, and of course, gladiatorial combat. Imagine then the first morning's event. At the center of the sandy arena stands a small platform, upon which a priest chants a slow, rhythmic prayer. Incense swirls in lazy circles. The Emperor Titus, robed and solemn, raises his hand in blessing. Trumpets sound, long, deep, ceremonial. Then the gates open, and from below rise the beasts. Leopards from Africa, bears from the north, crocodiles, even ostriches, all paraded before the crowd. Some are shown for marvel. Others hunted in staged combats by trained venatores, beast fighters armed with nets and spears. There is no silence in the Colosseum. The crowd cheers, gasps, roars. Vendors move up and down the rows, selling honeyed nuts and watered wine. The wealthy fan themselves with imported feathers. The poor lean forward, eyes wide. Between events, the arena is transformed. Trapdoors and lifts from the underground hippodrome raise new sets, painted trees, miniature temples, artificial hills. The floor is swept, relaid, prepared again. Then come the gladiators. Not all are slaves. Some are volunteers, driven by debt or dreams of fame. Some are criminals, some are prisoners of war. Each is announced with title and style: Mamilo, Retiarius, Secutor, Thraex, each with distinct weapons, armor, and methods. They fight not always to the death, but always to the crowd's satisfaction. And when one is beaten, wounded, or kneeling, the Emperor decides, a simple gesture, thumbs up or thumbs down. The games continue for days. Elephants parade, mock battles unfold. One day features a naval battle with the arena flooded and ships launched to recreate Rome's victories, spectacle upon spectacle, a theater of power. But it is more than just entertainment. It is politics, carefully staged. By opening the Colosseum with such grandeur, Titus solidifies his dynasty's place in the Roman heart. He erases memory of Vespasian's austerity and shows the people that their rulers are generous, indulgent, and strong. When the festival ends, the city is changed. Bread has been distributed, coin tossed, the masses fed, both physically and emotionally. For many, it is the greatest show they will ever see. The Colosseum, with its endless rows of seats and blood-stained sand, is not just a monument of stone. It is a mirror of Rome itself, vast, complex, proud, and always watching. As we leave behind the towering walls and the roar of crowds, we turn our gaze to those who stepped into the arena with even less protection and even fewer rights. Let us now meet the women, who fought not just for glory, but for the right to even be seen. Let your thoughts drift again down the narrow stone corridors beneath the grand stands of the Colosseum. The crowd is above, chanting, laughing, shifting in their seats. The roar filters downward like distant waves, but here, below the surface, the world is cooler. Still, lit only by flickering oil lamps hung in iron sconces. Shadows sway gently on the walls, and footsteps echo in bare stone halls. In one small room off the main passage, a group of figures prepare, not boisterous, not loud, but with quiet intensity. They are women, and they are gladiators. Their armor is lighter than that of the men. Some wear short leather tunics, others plain linen wrappings bound tight to the chest. A few adjust their helmets, crested and plumed, slightly oversized. Their swords, real, their shields, small and swift. These are not playthings. These are tools meant for survival or performance. The scent here is a mix of old leather, iron polish, and the earthy weight of the arena sand waiting above. One woman sharpens her blade slowly, not for effectiveness. The fight is likely choreographed, but for ritual. Another stretches her limbs with the fluid grace of a dancer. None speak. They've been here before, in other cities, in other spectacles. And though the audience may see them as novelty, they know better. Each one bears scars, some visible, some hidden, beneath the surface of skin and memory. The Roman world was not made for women of this kind. It was a society of roles, matrons, daughters, wives. It prized modesty, obedience, lineage, and yet, within this space, those boundaries blur. The earliest female gladiators likely came from the lower classes, slaves, criminals, or prisoners of war. Women with little to lose, cast into the amphitheater as entertainment. But there were exceptions. Historical fragments suggest that some free-born women, especially during the later empire, volunteered. Wealthy, bored, perhaps rebellious, they entered the arena not out of desperation, but desire. The desire to be seen, to be remembered, to feel powerful, even if just for a moment. The Roman historian Cassius Dio writes with disdain of noble women fighting in games, calling it shameful, a sign of society's decline. But to others it was thrilling, exotic, unusual, a disruption that drew eyes and sold tickets. In one famously recorded spectacle, two women, Amazonia and Achillea, faced each other in what was called a paired match. The names, theatrical and mythological, were chosen for effect. Painted shields, polished blades. The crowd, they say, was enchanted, confused, amused, unsettled. But were they skilled? We may never know. Yet the evidence suggests they were trained, some for months, some for years. They studied at the same schools, endured the same punishing routines, sword forms, endurance runs, sparring, falling, rising again. Their presence wasn't just tolerated, it was curated. Domitian, the emperor known for his cruelty and flair, once hosted a night hunt in which women were pitted against wild animals under torchlight. A cruel display, to be sure, but the audience came in droves, eager to see something new, something provocative. Not all fights were fatal. In fact, many were designed to end in stalemate or surrender, but danger always lingered. One slip, one mistimed step, and the sand could turn from stage to grave. Outside the arena, The world viewed these women with a mix of fascination and scorn. They were mocked in satire, painted in tavern murals, and mentioned in gossip-filled letters. But they were also remembered, etched into tombstones, sometimes given names like freedwoman or champion. The philosopher Seneca, ever the moralist, questioned how Rome could celebrate women wielding swords while expecting them to keep silent in the home. It was a contradiction that Rome never truly resolved. By the year 200 CE, that contradiction came to a head. Emperor Septimius Severus, perhaps seeking to restore a sense of order and decorum, issued a formal ban on female gladiators. The edict was clear: no woman, regardless of class, could fight in the arena again. The training schools stopped enrolling them, names vanished from the rolls, performances ceased, and just like that, an entire branch of spectacle was clipped from the tree, but traces remain. A lone statue, unearthed near Halicarnassus, shows a woman raising her arm in the gesture of victory, a simple, confident stance. Her name has been lost, but her presence endures in bronze and silence. Even now, in the quiet corners of old amphitheaters, archaeologists uncover small fragments, hairpins, beads, jewelry not typically worn by male fighters, echoes of those who stood in the sand and demanded to be seen. The Gladiatrix never became the norm, but she was never forgotten. She stood, briefly, brilliantly, in defiance of the roles assigned to her. Not a symbol of liberation, perhaps, but of presence, of a woman's form, scarred and real, standing beneath the Roman sun and refusing to vanish. And now, as her shadow fades behind us, we return to the broader stage, to the system that allowed it all to exist in the first place. A delicate balance of power, bread and performance. Let us now explore the politics of bread and circuses. As the crowds roared in the Colosseum and gladiators paced slowly beneath its arches, another game was being played, one with no swords, no sand, and no trumpets. It was the game of politics. Rome, you see, was not simply an empire of force. It was an empire of performance, and few performances were more effective than those that distracted, fed, and soothed the restless heart of the masses. The phrase bread and circuses, panemisicenses, was coined by the satirical poet Juvenal. He used it to mock the Roman people, suggesting they had given up their civic duties, their critical thought, even their pride, in exchange for two simple comforts: free grain and public entertainment. And he wasn't entirely wrong. By the late Republic and into the Empire, Rome had become a city of millions. A bustling, crowded, unpredictable mass of rich and poor, citizens and slaves, veterans and foreigners. Its streets echoed with every dialect, its alleys crowded with every vice. Keeping peace in such a place required strategy, and so Rome turned to spectacle. Bread, first. Every month, thousands lined up for grain distributions from the state. The annona, as it was called, ensured that no Roman citizen would starve. Over time, this expanded into regular doles, not just wheat, but sometimes olive oil, pork, even coin. The food wasn't a luxury, it was basic, meant to keep bellies full and complaints quiet. And then came the circuses. The term referred broadly to entertainment, chariot races, theater, public executions, and most notably, the gladiator games. These events were free, paid for by emperors, magistrates, or wealthy citizens trying to gain favor. No ticket, no tax. Just show up, cheer, be part of the crowd. From the outside, it looked generous, but it was deeply political. Every time a new amphitheater opened, or 100 lions were brought in from Africa, or a famed gladiator returned from retirement to fight once more, it sent a message. The emperor is strong, the state is stable, and more importantly, you are seen. You, the everyday Roman, are fed. You are entertained. You are not forgotten. It was a carefully crafted illusion of inclusion, but not all were deceived. Senators complained of the cost. Philosophers fretted over the loss of virtue. Some whispered that the people had become sheep, docile and unthinking. But emperors, especially the shrewd ones, knew better. They understood the power of mood. A restless population could riot, a hungry one could rebel, but a satisfied crowd, laughing at a comedy, gasping at a duel, filling their mouths with warm bread, was far less likely to storm the palaces. Even the structure of the Colosseum reflected this strategy. Seating was assigned by class, yes, but everyone had a place, even the poor, even the women, even the foreigners. From their perch high above, they still felt part of the grand machine. This was Rome's genius. It ruled not just by force, but by rhythm, by routine, by comfort. The dull clatter of grain into a sack, the echo of hooves on a racetrack, the sharp breath of awe when a gladiator raised his arms in victory. All of it, part of a system, not evil, not good, just deeply, enduringly human. And so, when you think of the arena, try not to picture only the blood and spectacle. Imagine instead the quiet satisfaction of a baker's son, sitting beside his father, eating figs and watching a play fight unfold. Imagine the steady hum of control, masked as generosity. The politics of bread and circuses were not written into law. They were whispered into hearts. And now, as we step away from the bright roar of the crowd, we descend deeper. Beneath the Colosseum, behind the trapdoors and elevators, lies a labyrinth hidden from public view. Let us gently descend into the mystery of the hypogeum. Breathe in slowly and imagine the shift in light, from the blinding white glare of the Roman sun to the dim, cool hush beneath the amphitheater. The steps are worn smooth, curved slightly inward from centuries of boots and sandals. The stone underfoot is damp in places, and as your eyes adjust, you begin to see shapes in the dark. Pillars, arches, doorways. A maze of narrow corridors spreads out beneath the Colosseum like a hidden city. This is the hypogeum, Greek for underground. Not merely storage, but a complex system of trapdoors, elevators, cages and passageways, invisible to the roaring crowd above. It is here that the illusion of the games is made real. Picture it now. Dozens of men at work, pulling ropes, operating pulleys, shifting heavy wooden platforms into place. A quiet choreography, timed, practiced, exact. Behind thick wooden gates, animals pace restlessly. Lions, tigers, elephants. Their cages roll into place along tracks built beneath the arena floor. The smells are dense, musky fur, dried hay, sour sweat, oil from torches. Nearby, gladiators wait in alcoves, some standing still in full armor, some kneeling in silence. Others rehearse last-minute instructions from trainers or handlers. It is not loud, it is tense. Above them, the arena is calm for now. The sand appears flat and bare. But the watchers above do not know that at any moment, from beneath, a man might rise through a hidden panel, or a beast, or an entire set piece like a tree, a boulder, or a small temple. This was the purpose of the hypogeum: surprise, spectacle. The arena floor was a kind of stage, and the hypogeum its backstage. A feat of Roman engineering so advanced that it would not be replicated in Europe for over 1,000 years. There were 80 vertical shafts, some used for props, others for animals or fighters. The elevators were powered by manpower alone, slaves and workers using counterweights, cranks and pulleys, often hidden behind partitions or housed in side chambers. The trapdoors above opened with precise timing. A panel would slide, a platform would rise, and suddenly there was a bear in the arena, or a prisoner, or a statue of a god, freshly oiled and painted for effect. The audience never saw how it was done. They saw only the magic. Even emperors were amazed by what could be done. Domitian ordered renovations to make the system more elaborate. Other rulers added their own improvements, some to stage naval battles, some to create special effects like artificial storms or volcanic eruptions. But down here, in the hypogeum, It was hot, cramped, dangerous. Men worked without recognition, timing their movements to the rhythm of horns above. The stakes were high. Mistimed platforms could lead to injury or ruin the illusion. An early release might send a lion charging into an empty arena. A stuck elevator might leave a gladiator stranded, listening to the crowd grow restless. Over time, the system grew more elaborate. More rooms, more elevators, more hidden corners. But the darkness remained, and when the games ended and the crowd dispersed, this place returned to silence. Empty cages, coiled ropes, the faint drip of water along a stone wall. The hypogeum was finally abandoned in the 6th century, left to the earth and time. It wasn't fully excavated until the 20th century. Archaeologists peeling back layers of soil and stone, discovering the rusted skeletons of elevators, ancient graffiti etched into walls, and strange objects, bones, coins, even a carved token once thought to be a good luck charm. Today, the hypogeum still stands beneath the Colosseum. Not all of it, but enough. Enough to walk its halls and feel the presence of the unseen. A place where the show began in silence and rose, like smoke, into the light. And now, let us return above, to water, not sand. For our next tale unfolds not in a tunnel or training yard, but in an ocean brought to Rome. Let us drift now to the strange world of Nero's mock sea battles. Now allow your mind to soften once more, and imagine the sound of lapping water, not on a distant shore, not beneath a ship's keel on the open sea, but in the very heart of Rome. Picture a vast artificial lake, man-made, still and shimmering under a heavy sky. Its banks are lined with marble steps and temporary wooden seating. Torches flicker along the edges. In the center, floating silently, 2 full-sized warships face one another, oars raised in salute. This is not war. This is theater. And the man behind the curtain is Emperor Nero. Known to history as one of Rome's most controversial rulers, Nero ruled from 54 to 68 CE. His reign was filled with contradictions, opulence and chaos, grandeur and scandal, cruelty and strange moments of artistic sensitivity. He fancied himself not merely a ruler, but a performer, a poet, a musician, an actor, and yes, a producer of public spectacle. And nothing pleased Nero more than something never before seen, something extraordinary. So when it came time to stage a naumachia, a mock naval battle, Nero did not simply fill the Colosseum with water, as later emperors might attempt. Instead, he dug an entire lake, the Stagnum Neronis, or Nero's Basin, just outside the city, with aqueducts redirecting water, slaves shaping the banks, and engineers ensuring that the depths could hold the weight and maneuvering of real ships. The battles themselves were reenactments of famous sea encounters, Egyptian fleets battling Greeks, pirates clashing with imperial navies, or stylized versions of Rome's own conquests. Dozens, sometimes hundreds of men took part. They were not actors. They were usually prisoners, condemned criminals, or slaves, handed weapons and sent out onto the water to fight. The ships were real. The blood often was real. And yet it was called a game. From the shore, Nero would watch, seated beneath a canopy of embroidered silk, surrounded by senators, nobles, foreign ambassadors, and hand-picked guests. He might narrate the event himself, or compose poetry in its honor, or on occasion step into a role dressed in costume, performing a song before the action began. The crowd, numbering in the tens of thousands, watched from terraced seats. They gasped at collisions. They cheered at well-timed maneuvers. They pointed at shipwrecks and men in the water. The spectacle was everything: smoke, flame, chariots on floating platforms, actors on rafts dressed as gods. It was chaos, choreographed. There are records of Nero staging more than one naumachia, some in the artificial lake, others rumored to have been held on the Tiber River, temporarily diverted or dammed to accommodate the show. He spared no expense. Gold-leafed sails, painted hulls, musicians playing from the shoreline. But even as the crowds applauded, the murmurs grew louder. Not everyone saw the glory. Some saw madness, waste, hubris. The cost of these battles was staggering, the human cost sobering. Those forced to fight had no training, little chance, and no hope of survival. They died not in the name of conquest, but for applause. When Nero died, by suicide in 68 CE, his successors distanced themselves from his indulgences. The artificial lake was drained. In its place, the Flavian emperors began construction on something far more enduring, the Colosseum itself. And yet, Nero's legacy of water-bound warfare would inspire others. Later emperors, including Titus and Domitian, attempted their own water spectacles, some within the arena, using clever hydraulics and staging. Rome remembered, because it always did. And though the waters have long since dried and the ships have rotted away, one can still close their eyes and hear the echo of creaking wood, crashing waves, and the strange silence between performances. From sea to sand, we now return to the core of the gladiator's existence. Not the training, not the battle, but the end. Let us now explore what it meant to die in the arena. Not just physically, but symbolically. A ritual, a myth, a final performance. Settle into stillness once again, and picture the arena just moments after the clash. The sand is scuffed, marked by footprints and streaks left by dragged shields. The sunlight pours down in wide golden sheets, cutting shadows beneath the archways. The crowd is hushed, not silent but expectant. The fight is over. One man stands, chest heaving. The other is on his knees. Perhaps he clutches his side. Perhaps he has already let go of his weapon. Perhaps he merely waits, head bowed, as the arena, the machine of Rome's judgment, makes its decision. This is not just defeat. This is a ritual. The death of a gladiator was never simply about death. It was a performance, bound by tradition, law, and silent expectations. To fall bravely was to fall with honor. To die well was to become more than a man. It was to become memory. But who decided? The emperor, if present, or the editor? The munerarius, the one who paid for the games. He would look to the crowd. Sometimes the spectators raised their voices, other times they raised their thumbs. Despite what popular culture suggests, the meaning of the thumb gestures is still debated. Some believe thumbs up meant death, mimicking the thrust of a sword. Others say it meant mercy. The truth may be lost, or it may have varied. What mattered was the spectacle. If mercy was granted, the defeated might live to fight again. Wounds would be treated, meals served, the slow rhythm of recovery would begin. But if death was decreed, then it came with formality. The victor was expected to deliver a clean strike, usually to the neck or chest, not drawn out, not cruel, a quick ending. The defeated was to accept it calmly, to show no fear, to die with dignity. And once the final blow was struck, a hush would settle over the crowd, not of mourning, but of recognition. Men entered the arena as slaves, but many died as heroes. Their names, if they were popular, might be carved into tablets, spoken in taverns, even sung in street songs. Wealthy spectators might commission small statues or paintings of their favorites. Some gladiators became icons, their faces etched into lamps, jewelry, and mosaics, and the bodies. They were not left where they fell. Special attendants, called Charons, named after the mythic ferryman of the dead, entered the arena dressed in dark robes. They carried mallets to ensure death was final. Sometimes a small blade was used to pierce the heart if there was doubt. Then the body was removed on a stretcher. Some were buried in gladiator cemeteries outside city walls. Others were claimed by fellow fighters who formed close-knit communities like brotherhoods. Occasionally, if the fallen was especially beloved, patrons or fans would cover the cost of burial. Wreaths were laid, coins placed on eyelids, names scratched into stone, and thus began the myth of the fallen gladiator. He became not just a man who died in the arena, but a symbol of strength, endurance, loyalty. To fight in the games was to live dangerously. To die in the games was to become eternal. In poems and graffiti, gladiators were called the delight of women, the envy of men. They were sometimes seen as lovers, sometimes as rebels, sometimes as saints of the blood-soaked stage. One stone inscription reads, "He fought 5 times, he won 4. He died well." That was enough. That was everything. The audience may have moved on by the next morning. The sand may have been swept clean. But for a few days, perhaps even a few weeks, someone remembered. A name whispered, a story told, a nod passed between fighters in the training yard, honoring the one who didn't return. And now, with the ritual complete and the arena cleared once more, we climb from death to decadence, to the other side of Roman life. Let us now leave the Colosseum behind and step into candlelit halls, embroidered couches, and silver platters piled high. Let us now explore the emperor's banquet, opulence after violence. Now gently lift your mind from the grit of the amphitheater floor and follow the fading sound of cheers down winding streets, past marble columns and shaded porticos, toward a world reserved for the very few. The arena has emptied. The crowd disperses, satisfied and sun-drunk, weaving back into the chaos of the city. But in one corner of Rome, behind towering gates and manicured gardens, a different sort of gathering begins. An imperial banquet. Imagine yourself now stepping through towering bronze doors into a villa glowing with golden lamplight. The air is heavy with the scent of saffron, rosewater, and warm honeyed wine. Slaves move in silence, their feet bare on cool mosaic floors. The walls shimmer with painted myth. Venus rising from the sea, Bacchus crowned with ivy, Mars with his sword at rest. Here there is no roar, no blood, only the soft clinking of glass and the rustle of silk. The emperor reclines on a low couch, surrounded by senators, generals, and favored artists. His tunic is embroidered with thread of Tyrian purple, the color of empire, drawn from rare sea snails, worth more than gold. The tables, low and wide, are laden with food. Not simple fare, but a dazzling array of Roman luxury. Oysters from Baiae, still chilled on beds of crushed snow. Stuffed dormice, roasted and served with pine nuts and honey. Flamingo tongue, prized for its delicate flavor. And bread, crisp, warm, infused with herbs and olive oil poured from imported clay jugs. Wine flows freely. It is never served plain, always mixed with seawater, herbs, or dried roses. The guests sip from goblets of silver or blown glass, their conversations muted by politeness and hidden tensions. Musicians pluck soft chords on lyres in the background. A poet recites verses composed earlier in the day, an ode to Mars, perhaps, or to the emperor himself. Dancers move between courses. Perfumed mist is released from bronze grates in the floor. Everything is choreographed, everything deliberate, and yet, beneath the surface, a strange quiet persists. Because just hours before, some of these very guests were seated in the front row of the Colosseum, watching men fight and fall. Perhaps the emperor even gestured for mercy or raised his hand for death. Now he lifts a fig to his mouth and smiles. This was the rhythm of Rome. Violence in the morning, elegance in the evening. The arena was for the people, a display of control, of generosity, of strength. The banquet was for the elite, a mirror held up to the power structure, a gathering where alliances were formed, enemies assessed, and excess was worn like armor. The same gladiator who died with honor in the sand might be remembered here, not by name, but as part of a clever anecdote, a metaphor in a toast, a topic of detached curiosity. Did you see the Retiarius this morning? Extraordinary footwork. That last blow, beautifully timed. The conversation flits from games to politics, to marriage proposals and the condition of the eastern provinces. And still, the courses come. Pickled sea urchins, boiled crane. A pie that, when cut, releases live birds that flutter briefly before vanishing into the rafters. Nothing is practical. Nothing is ordinary. Even the plates, intricately etched with scenes of myths and battles, are themselves a reminder. Rome is not like other places. And as the banquet winds down, some guests drift into side rooms for dice games. Others lean back and sip herbal infusions. The emperor retires, attended by dozens. The lamps dim. The final notes of the lyre echo off the stone. Outside, the city is quieter now. The arena has been swept, the cages closed, the tunnels sealed for the night, but the contrast lingers. Above the same earth where men fought for their lives, others dined on songbirds and cream. Such was the Roman world. A place of balance, not of peace, where sand met silk, where power was shown not only in who commanded armies, but in who chose the vintage of wine served after the games. And so, with soft footsteps, we step away from the banquet, away from Rome, and into the quiet that follows history's noise. Now, rest easy. The empire is quiet now, the crowds have gone, the torches have burned low. What remains are shadows, impressions, echoes of lives once lived in the glare of 1,000 eyes. You've walked the sand, stood in the tunnels, looked into the eyes of emperors and rebels alike. You've seen what it was like, why it sucked to be a gladiator in Rome. And yet, how strangely beautiful, complex and human their world truly was. Let your thoughts drift now, like leaves on the Tiber, and sleep if you haven't already. Tomorrow we'll find a new story, but for now, let history keep watch over your dreams.